So hi, welcome. Good afternoon to everybody. Everybody that's joined us on the webinar today. My name is Taryn and I'm a former teacher who works at Century Tech. I'm one of the primary leads there. So it's my job to make the content that you might see, and I support and train many of our primary schools. I'm also one of the hosts on our webinar today. So we're really excited to be talking to you today about English and maths innovations and technology and how it can be used to inspire our learners. And we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers, teachers from across the UK. Our webinar is co-hosted, so it's Century Tech and Pobble, which is a writing tool that I'm sure many of you already know. So firstly, why are we doing this together? Well, especially given this year, we really have, we place a big importance on collaboration. We've been working alongside each other for a couple of years in a really complementary manner, Pobble focusing on writing and Century on reading, maths and science, in a way that we hope that really benefits the educational sector. So I have with me today Simon Blower, who is a co-founder and director of one of the directors of Pobble, and we're going to be introducing the speakers today. So a little bit of virtual housekeeping before we start. We have a Q&A box at the bottom. And if you want to ask any questions during the presentations, either to myself or Simon or to one of our panelists, please put it into the Q&A box at any point. And then we'll have an opportunity, maybe 10 minutes at the end, to go through your questions to whoever you've directed them to. So you can write about anything. So if it's something to do with the product, something to do with how it's being used in school, just put that into that chat box. So very warm welcome to our joint webinar today. And I'm really excited to pass you over to Simon, who's going to be introducing the first speaker. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Taryn. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. This is the second event we've run with Century. Last week's was a huge success. Lots of brilliant questions at the end. So as Taryn mentioned, do please pop those questions into the Q&A as we go through. It's been a real pleasure to work alongside Century on this particular event. We've known each other for many years. As Taryn mentioned, you know, we very much sit in the writing space and Century doing lots of other wonderful things in the other subjects mentioned. And we really felt that actually coming together to support schools during what we know has been a really busy time, really challenging 15, 16 months now, to just share some of the great things that have been going on in some of the schools that we've worked more closely with. And, you know, having spent many hours presenting on Zoom, it was a real pleasure last week to just take a step back and to listen to some just amazing school leaders and teachers talk about how they'd embraced EdTech and innovation and technology to have the biggest impact possible on their students. So today really is about listening to other teachers, so school leaders, tell her their story about what they consider when thinking about EdTech in their classroom, some specifically about, you know, the way they've used Pobble, but also, of course, how they've potentially used Century as well. So at this point, I'd like to introduce a good friend of Pobble, Sam Keys. Now, Sam is a Year 6 teacher and deputy head at St. Bede School in Newcastle. We've known Sam now for a couple of years, and through the work that we see on Twitter and through sort of conversations that we've had, yeah, it's just been really fascinating to hear about how Sam's used technology with his own children and obviously some of the barriers and challenges to that, as well as, of course, some of the real positive impacts that he's seen technology have. So I'm very much, Sam, looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Very similarly, if you do have a question for Sam, do post that into the Q&A as well. Sam will join us in the panel discussion at the end of all of the presentation. So without further ado, Sam, I will hand the reins over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'll just click onto my slides and make a hasty start. So, yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about using that Pobble platform and how it's inspired some writing for me. But first, I'll just sort of tell you about me, where we're at, and the context I'm in, and it might relate to yours. It might be a very different picture. So, the Year 6 teacher, deputy head, and Senko at a Catholic primary school in Newcastle. Joined the school about 3 years ago. It's a really brilliant school with a really diverse catchment. We've got a really high percentage of pupil premium children, a really high percentage of EEL children, English as additional language, and we're slap bang in the middle of a council estate, effectively, with no green space around us. And when I came to the school, there was some use of technology, not a great deal. Move to any school, you sort of feel things out and start to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work. And then, of course, a year and a half, 2 years into me being there, lockdown hit, and in truth, were we prepared for that in a technology sense? No, we weren't. And so I had to do a little bit of fast thinking and trying to figure out what was going to work for us, and sort of try and catch up with many other schools who were, on the ground and running straight away. Bodle was something though that we had, at hand, and realised that we could quickly sort of adapt what we were doing and use that to our advantage too. The reason we signed up to Bodle was because, like many schools, I guess, we were in a situation where we're making steady progress in reading, we're making steady progress in maths, but writing was a little bit flat. I don't think there's any other way to put it, really. It was just a little bit flat. We needed something to kick it, something to bring it to life, something to give it a bit of purpose and a bit of pizzazz, and just to inspire our kids a little bit more. And Bobble's really done that for me and my pupils. And it's been a real success in our school. So I wanted to share a little bit of that success with you today. And hopefully it's something that, you might take something away from. So I've put some videos on my slides. It's more so, so there's something going on in the background, and to keep me on my timings, and just show you a little bit about the Bodle platform. So I'll just let this run in the background and I'll talk about how I'm using it. So I've used their short burst writing. When you head to the Bodle platform, there's reams and reams and reams of really good examples of text written by children. One of the things I was finding was that kids were loving seeing that other children have submitted work. You can get, as many examples of your writing as you want and share them with the kids. And that, it's not going to be the same. We call them waggles, don't know what a good one looks like. Sometimes you can really wow them with something you've written. What I found though is kids really analyze other kids' writing way, way more, especially when it's a good one. It's brilliant to put that in front of them and say, oh, this is a year 6 bit of work. You're looking at a year 6 bit of work. It gives some of them a bit of a boost, thinking, oh, well, I'm writing, to that sort of standard. I feel quite good about that. And some are going, whoa, that's quite impressive. I maybe need to up my game a little bit. I really like that about it. So logging onto the platform and seeing so many great, examples of text. And just on the screen there, I've been playing around with a setting description, for example, and scrolling through trying to find a description of a setting. So in a short burst writing lesson, I might dive onto Bodle, find myself a really high quality text that I know I'm going to use. And I clicked the wrong button when I'm on there and recorded that, sorry. And I've added that work to a lesson presentation that I'm making. So what I loved about Bodle is that not only has it got this sort of bank of really, really good quality text, it's also got a load of tools that have really saved me a lot of time. And this was, great to use over lockdown when you're putting something together for a Zoom lesson or something that you want to give the kids a link to go back and look at. So this one here was a set and description lesson, and it says building up the tools to write a set and description in a narrative story that we've been working on. So I used this as a short burst, extra bit of writing in amongst a wider topic. Found there a really good description about New York written by a 10 or 11-year-old that I've used the filters to search for. And then I've popped in some success criteria. So you can see how easy that is to just, tap away. I said that I really, really wanted the kids to use fronted adverbials there. Notice on the right, I can add some prompts as well to sort of give kids a hint if they needed a hint. I've gone on and said that I want to feed the information. I want to sort of show, not tell, piece by piece, dripping it through, instead of, you know what, sometimes our kids want to tell you everything in that first sentence. I want them to go slowly. And the next one there, I want them to start a sentence with emotion. One of the things I've found my kids were really struggling with was the same sentence starter again and again and again. And then another one there, use personification. I was introducing that for the first time. So I've given an example, the clouds consume the sky, and I've popped that as a prompt. So I've got some really good, success criteria to work on. The prompts tool there really helped too. And then, as you can see on there, there's loads of other features too. I can add some images in the background to inspire that set and description. Search whatever you like in there. What's great about Bodle is it's got a really good image bank too. So you're not breaching all those copyright rules that we're dodging left, right, and center. So I've popped in a picture of a forest there, made it nice and big, and put it in the center. Or he does in a second. And really quickly, I'm building up a high quality, short burst writing stimulus there. Pop some lined paper on, so I can get up on my board and do some modeling. That's been great to do as well. And then another feature in a second as well, I'm finding that lots of the children at the school I'm in at the minute, we've got a high percentage of children with dyslexia. So having this accessibility colour there was really handy too. So yeah, it's been a bit of a game changer really, that I can quickly set up a presentation like that, pull in a really good example of a bit of pupil work of a child there. I could even get the kids to comment on it if I like. They've pulled to pieces some of the aspects of that. One of the sentence starter was freezing, I walk to this. They're given a bit of a sense of feel in there as well. I love the concrete jungle bit at the start. But this bit's really cool too. Not only can I build up that slideshow and set it up for my class to see, I can also share that lesson. So I can send that with all of the kids that are on the Zoom lesson perhaps, or if they're in class, if they've got their iPads or their laptops or whatever tech you've got. If they're at home, there's a link to it in sort of a PDF form as well if they wanted. They can access that lesson. And I just found that addition recently a really, really, really important tool. When the kids have got that lesson, this is a pupil login, so they've logged on, and when they've logged into their account, they can actually access that lesson that I've sent, as I've said. And they can see those success criteria that I've gone for. Sorry, the video is just frozen there. And they can see the stimulus, the picture up close, and then they can add their own work straight on there. I really like this. They can add their writing that I've required for that short burst. We've done our modeling. I've really shown off that high quality standard that I'm expecting. They've looked at another child's piece of work that they've been inspired by or had a confidence boost by. They've got the success criteria down the side of the plate and they've jumped straight into their work. I love it. It's all there in one place. They've got their stimulus, they've got their success criteria, and they've got a sort of a form to type in, a page to type in and get going. It's been brilliant seeing the children's reaction to this, that it's not, right, now you're closing the iPads that they're dead excited about getting out, and you're going to get your book, and then you're going to do this with your book, and this is on the screen, and then someone at the back says, oh, Mr. Keys, can you put the success criteria back on? And then there's a groan because the rest of the class wanted the picture to stay up because they wanted to use that as the focus. So I've just done a bit of writing there. Cautiously, I began my journey through the enchanted forest. Each step took me deeper into a mystical world. Fear crippled every muscle in my body. As the trees, I think I've gone for some personification here. So yeah, as the trees lurch towards me in the wind. Okay. So then I'm just going down here. I've actually sent that work to be reviewed. And this is a really cool tool that's just been added as well. I sound like I'm a salesperson. I'm not. I'm just a really big fan of how, it's had great impact in my class. So instead of having that short burst in a book that I might see at the end of the day, with COVID restrictions, I might not see it for a little while, the kids are now going into their own work, they're reviewing their work, they're using the highlighter tools at the top and showing me that they've achieved the success criteria that I've introduced at the start of the lesson. I really, really like that addition. It's a, bit of assessment there. They've actually just added, and I used this one this afternoon, peer assessment as well. So you can select when you're sending it to your class, that at the end of the lesson, it'll send it to another child in the class. So when you've submitted your work and you've clicked that button, you've been sent another piece by another child, and then you can do the same sort of thing for them, look through, and then, send it back. And then, they've had their work reviewed by a peer as well as their teacher. Really like that addition. So yeah, that's been a real game changer in terms of how I've used tech to inspire that short burst writing. Having it all in one place has just been brilliant, to be fair. Quickly on to the next one. Lots of you will have heard of Pobble 365. This is how I first sort of came to see what Pobble was, where we have, a picture a day and there's some tasks to go with it, but it's really sort of transformed recently and grown. They're ready to go lessons in a way. Today, for example, relative clauses was a really important sort of block, a tool that the children needed in the block that I'm teaching. And I popped onto Pobble and found a relative clauses lesson. So there's a picture there, story starter, continue the story, question time, some really good inference questions, sentence challenges where you've got to correct some, and then some grammar and punctuation too. And then picture it, draw what these were great in lockdown for little extra tasks when some children were flying through. And as I just mentioned about that relative clause thing, there's actually a curriculum map too. And on there, you can go in and find the objective for your year group, and it's linked to a Pobble 365 task or, a ready-to-go lesson that you can fly into. Today we did one, Twisted Fairy Tales, and that had a relative clause element to it as well. So that was really, really good. So I'll flick off that one. So as I said at the start, why Pobble for us? Well, actually, it's given us that access to a real big bank of real writing examples, not just ones that I've kept that maybe aren't current anymore, or ones that I've written and I've been a big fan of, but what the assessment framework has said that I'm developing, I'm no longer great at depth, or whatever it may be. It's given the kids a purpose to write. I've not even mentioned that their writing can be sent, so they can be one of the examples that's shared around, around their site and around the world. It's given that independent learning opportunity where the kids are reviewing. It's not just a case of, I think I'm done, Mr. Keys, there you go. And it's definitely improved the standard of writing in our school and enabled us to show progress over time. So before I wrap up, I would just say the Pobble team have been brilliant at getting this off the ground in school for us. So definitely just ask, and if maybe you want a little bit more information, they're fab. And there's also some really good guides to get your school leaders, you may be a school leader, or to get your school leader convinced that it could be something to have a look at. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of Pobble, and it's really, really been a big addition to us over the last year or so.
Thanks, Sam. And yeah, just to say, everybody, that was in sitting back, I don't think I've done as good a demo myself this week. So yeah, first of all, big thank you, Sam. I intentionally asked Sam to present today because I remember visiting his school right at the beginning of his Pobble journey and him sort of explaining a little bit about the challenges of their school. And, we work with schools that have got amazing writers already, got fantastic technology. We work with independent, international, state schools. And, one of the reasons I really have enjoyed listening and learning from Sam is I know where the starting point was. So again, there will be people joining today who are far more advanced in their technology journey. And, you'll hear from a couple of colleagues in a moment from a different school where they're on a slightly different tech journey. But I hope from that you can see, tech can be used in lots of wonderful ways, lots of other amazing products out there as well. And I think the key thing that came across, Sam, and comes across in lots of conversations I have with school is one, having a plan, whatever product you decide to implement, and it has to align with what the goals are for your school. And yeah, so yeah, really big thank you, Sam. And as Sam mentions, yeah, we'll definitely talk at the end about how you can get some extra information from us as well. So yeah, really do appreciate that, Sam. So moving on to our second presentation. Now, obviously today was definitely about EdTech innovation, a joint sort of venture in a way with Century. So our next two speakers, they're going to speak as a pair, obviously taking it in turns. I'd like to welcome Kate Bodle and Rosie Wilkinson, both from St. Mary's Prep. St. Mary's are part of the Cognita Independent School Group, a group of schools we've been working with for just over 2 years now. Rosie is very much the classroom teacher, has been using Pobble in her classroom. She will tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But Kate, as the deputy head, is going to lead a little bit more on their EdTech journey. I know they're about to embark on their Century journey as well. And I know Kate will, I'm sure, tell you a little bit about the things that they consider when thinking about EdTech, and obviously perhaps some of their learnings over the last couple of years as well. And obviously their way that they're thinking about using technology moving forward. So yeah, big warm welcome. I believe, Kate, you're going to begin the presentation.
Yes, hello everyone. So we are a very different kind of school. We're an independent school, but we're a very small independent school. We're very lucky that we are part of a wider Cognita group. So that's gives us a lot of extra scope for being able to be involved in sort of bigger projects and things than perhaps we would do as a little school on our own. But we started with Pobble in early 2019. So Pobble was a very different beast at that moment in time. We were introduced to it at a conference, I think it was, and quickly saw the benefit of being able to publish children's work and giving them a purpose for writing. And that was our kind of impetus to get started. We had pretty good results on the whole. Our reading and our results were fine, but writing, as I think it is in many, many schools, just lagged that little bit behind, and there wasn't a kind of enthusiasm for writing. Children were writing because they had to, not because they were really engaged and enthusiastic. So we embarked on our Pobble journey, had, as Sam said, incredible support from the Pobble team to get us started, and began publishing our work early in 2019. One of the big things that appealed to us as and I wasn't the deputy head then, but I was one of the school leaders, was the fact that we could really engage parents in the children's writing and get them really excited about what was happening and what their children were doing. And by publishing their work and the little notification going to a parent so that they could see that their child's work had been chosen that week, and that they could then comment on their work or see other people's comments that they'd put onto their children's work, was really inspiring for them. So this in turn also engages the children, the fact that their writing may be chosen to be published that week, and that they could have their work put online, was absolutely brilliant. And we very quickly found that the motivation for writing started to really improve. We were also using Pobble 365 a little bit at the time, and Pobble lessons had just started. Simon will be able to tell me exactly when that happened, but the Pobble lessons had just started to come online as well, and that we was beginning to use that sort of thing. From a school leader point of view, it also gives us really good evidence for inspection. It gives us good evidence if we ever want to show progress in children's writing, and that was absolutely fantastic. Now, as Pobble has grown and developed, we can see so much more benefit, and Rosie will talk a lot more about all the different things that Pobble can do now. But something else that has been really helpful to us, particularly from lockdown, has been that those Pobble lessons and the resources that are there that will really help with teacher productivity and workload. So it's something that we've been very mindful of. So Pobble was our kind of first journey into EdTech really as a school. I mean, we had iPads and a bank of laptops at the time, but we're very lucky, as I say, being part of the Cognita Schools group, that earlier this year we were part of an IT rollout where all of the children have been given a one-to-one device in Key Stage 2. This has really revolutionised things for us, because rather than having to wait our turn, as I'm sure many schools have to, for the laptops and the trolley getting wheeled into the classrooms once a week or whatever, it meant that we have much more instant access now to technology for the children. Unfortunately, we didn't have that during the first lockdown, but we had started to look at Microsoft as our main sort of applications that we use. And I enrolled on to programs and training through the Microsoft Education Centre and have become a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert, which means that I have quite a good knowledge of Microsoft tools. And so we could start to use Microsoft Word with all its accessibility features to help again with our writing. And then that meant that we could then upload that writing onto Bodle, which was fantastic. And it started to enable some of our children that were a little bit more reluctant or were dyslexic and found spelling and presentation difficult. They also now can use Dictate, and that really helps them with their writing so that their writing can look as good as everybody else's when it's published, which would be fantastic. Alongside that, we've also explored various other bits of technology. We've become increasingly more confident. I would say it's also been at times quite overwhelming. I know all schools around the world have suddenly had this massive influx of technology they've had to get to grips with, but some of the things that we now use are Seesaw for our sort of main learning platform. We also use Teams for our Key Stage 2 children. We've started looking at apps like Book Creator, Flipgrid, Adobe Spark. So our children are now really immersed in the world of technology, but we still want them to be writing. So we're using Bodle very much as our writing basis of tools, but we sometimes then present our work not only on Bodle but also through Book Creator, or we get children to create with Flipgrid to produce a video to explain their thinking and their work. So we are now, we've just discovered the word is app smashing, which is you know, makes us feel like we're doing amazing things, but actually it's very easy when you have such good tools behind you. And then going forward, we are just starting our journey with Century. So again, fantastic support from the Century team. It's been brilliant. And it's giving us great insights into the children's learning for their reading, for their SPAG work, for their maths and for their science. It means we're beginning to start, even though we're very early on our journey, we're already identifying where there are gaps, where there are children that we need to stretch more. The way that the children are learning, the AI that's involved that tells us, you know, whether they're putting in the right amount of effort and they're learning more effectively has been really helpful. Again, as a school leader, it's having a big impact on teacher workload and their productivity. It's also giving us great things in terms of being able to report to parents, really good evidence for our data collection. So we're really, really excited about this start and this foray into Century, and that's our sort of next step. So that's just a really whistle-stop overview of how we've sort of come on this massive journey since 2019, really, with a huge leap over the kind of lockdown period. And I'll hand over to Rosie to tell you more about what we're doing with Bodle and how we're using it.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, so as Simon said, we've been at Bodle School for nearly 3 years, and we saw from the first sort of training sessions that we went on as staff and as English teachers, and we started implementing it in the classroom, the engagement from the children was instant, which was really rewarding to see that every school has, you know, a collection of reluctant writers. And as Simon had put it to us, you know, it's a way of engaging those reluctant writers to be enthusiastic. And it worked so quickly. And the enthusiasm that we have for writing across the school now, just, you can hear it's a ripple from, you know, kindergarten all the way up to year 6, which is very rewarding for us as teachers, but also for the parents too. We try to publish about 3 pieces of work per class a week. Obviously with online learning, that's been a little bit tricky, but prior to the lockdown last year, we were on track for doing that, which was great. And we need to definitely get back onto our sort of publishing on a regular basis. And we also like to celebrate the children who have been published. So when we were able to get together and gather for assemblies, we would showcase the work that had been published that week, and we would have it on the big screen and all the children would be able to see. And we also bought some Pobble lanyards, which we would like to start to use in September, when we're able to sort of share things a little bit more, in that the children who are the published authors that week can wear a lanyard for the week so that everybody knows they are published authors. Even just seeing their work on the screen with their peers in their classes, the smile on their faces makes it just so worthwhile, and you can see how proud they are of themselves. So not only have we seen huge impacts on our pupil engagement and the progress with our writing, and it has been quite phenomenal actually. Our parent engagement has been amazing. So like Kate said, every time a child's work is published, the parent then gets notification of that, and they can go in, see their child's work, and they can comment on it. And that has a really positive impact on a child's self-esteem, because they know that their work is not only being celebrated at school, but it's also being celebrated at home, which is, as we know, for children, really, really important to know that there's that homeschool link. And also our student-to-student engagement has been really positive. So every child has a login, which is just a 4-digit code, and they can log in and comment on other people's writing. And the website is set up so that they're given sort of hints as to comments that they could write, next steps. There's always a positive, then perhaps something that they really liked, something that they think the child could work on. And then they, end with a really enjoyed reading your work. And it could be children from our school, or it can be any piece of work on Pobble. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of examples of amazing work from reception all the way up to secondary school. Obviously, we only see the primary. And it's amazing to see the exemplars of work from other year groups. It's also amazing to see from a sort of school leadership point of view, the pieces of work that are being published throughout the school. And it's lovely to see when the children do log on that they can comment on each other's work, and it's that instant gratification that someone is really impressed with what you've done, and it's a special thing to see. So we've also started to use the Pobble lessons, which we saw earlier, and they've been really, really useful in terms of our staff engagement, but also making sure that teachers are spending less time planning, because the work is there for you, and it's just about finding the work that works for you. And brilliantly, you can go in and you can edit the lessons, and you can take out the things that you don't need. You could just have it as a small starter, which works really well for some of the SPAG lessons, because they do extend onto sort of more writing, but it's good to be able to just have a small starter. So the Pobble lessons have worked really well for us, and we're now moving on to using Pobble for moderation. And we've been really lucky to have Laura from Pobble, who is a moderation expert. She is going to be giving us some in-house training, which will be great. So we'll be using the moderation tool to moderate our writing against each other in the school, but also against other schools, other Pobble schools and our Cognita schools. And sort of to round up, I would say that Pobble has had a really positive impact on our scores. It's had a really good impact on our data. It's had a good impact on child self-esteem. It's had a brilliant impact on parent and pupil engagement. And it's brilliant to see that such a fantastic tool has enabled some of our more reluctant or less confident writers to write way beyond perhaps what was expected of them, because they've had the process of going through and feeling confident and feeling proud of what they've achieved. And it's been really fabulous. So thank you, Simon, for all of your help.
Thank you very much, Rosie and Kate. I just wondered, before we move on, you're only just starting on your Century journey. I wondered if either of you could tell me why you decided to use Century and how you're planning on using it to support your learners.
At the moment, we've started by making sure that all the children are doing their diagnostics. And I think for us, it was a way of plugging the gaps a little bit, because it's so amazing to see, you can see how long they've spent on a question and how long it's taken them to get through the nuggets. And, it identified things that I didn't even realize that they were struggling with. So, for example, my year 4s have done their diagnostic, and they started with word classes, and some of my more able children found that so difficult. So now that gives me, for next week, And for this week's homework, it's all about word classes, because there were gaps there that I didn't realise they were finding so difficult.
Fabulous, thank you. You're adding, oh, sorry, Kate.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think from a school leader's point of view, we were aware of that sort of ability to have that big overview of how the children are doing, and also we've been talking a lot in school about sort of metacognition, getting children to understand how they learn, but also about retrieval practice. And when we talk about retrieval practice and just making sure that children really are constantly revisiting learning, this was a good way for them to either work independently or for teachers to set them bits of work to do. And just means that we are learning at the children's own pace at times as well, and we can stretch more able children whilst also helping and supporting the children who've got special needs or just need a slightly slower pace of learning. So it's really good for that as well. It's been brilliant.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. For everybody watching, we do have our Q&A box. So make sure that if you've got any questions for our panelists, or you've got any questions for me or Simon, please do put that into the Q&A box. So our next speaker is Karl, and Karl is an assistant head and year 6 teacher at Barrowford Primary. They are huge Century users, and he's going to be taking a look at how they use the AI technology to support their learning in post-lockdown. So over to you, Karl.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'll just caveat where we're at the moment, just with how we got into Century. So we bought into Century just at the start of lockdown last year. And the reasons we went for Century as a platform to use were because of the ability for us to manage teacher workload, given the distance between us and the children, our ability to still be able to follow the curriculum in sequence, and then deviate where we needed to and plan specific things for the children to learn along the way. The fact that the AI behind it is incredible. So the more that the children engage with it, the more they put into it, the more they get out of it, the smarter the system gets, the better pitched the questions are for the children. The fact that we can track really closely exactly how children are doing in every area of the curriculum as well, across math, science and reading, as well as grammar, was just amazing for us. So that was our decision that prompted us to buy into it. And the way that we used it initially during lockdown was through delivering teaching inputs, so live teaching, and then what we would do is we'd follow it up with some nuggets that were based on that lesson. So I've just taken a little screenshot here, and we did that using the planner tool. So if you decide to use Century and never ever mess with it and never touch it, it will continuously generate learning for the children to do across maths, English, science and grammar. You don't have to deviate. There's a learning path that the children can just follow through, and it will bring things up that they need to recap in time. We wanted a little bit more control over what was happening and when. So we would deliver our live teaching sessions, and then using the planning tool on Century, we would then set particular nuggets to go live. So on the screen here, so we've got operations of equal parity and the bid mass 4 operations. We chose that to go live at a certain time. And when it did, it gave us the opportunity to see who was engaging, how well they were doing, which questions they got right, which questions they got wrong, how long it took them to do certain questions. And it allowed us to feel like we were still in a really good place with our learning, even though we had that distance. We also, because of the feedback we were getting, and because it was quite instant, the feedback, we were able to then remotely drop into what we would call tutorials. So we could then, we use Microsoft Teams as well. So we would then get in touch with the children on Teams, and then we could have some one-to-one sessions where we'd build on any misconceptions, we'd address anything that was an issue for the children that had been fed back to us via Century very, very quickly. So that was amazing for us to be able to do that. And again, this is just an image of what that might look like. So this is one of the children have attempted a nugget. They can attempt nuggets multiple times. So if it's a concept that they've struggled with initially and they've not done too well on, you can then go and intervene, give feedback, and they can have another go, and you can track the progress across the number of attempts and across the year as well. So here it gives us a breakdown of the different questions that were answered, the time that it took to answer the question, whether it was right or not. But then on the left-hand side, you can see there's a little plus icon. If you click that, it drops down so you can see exactly what answer the children have put as well, so what they've responded with. So it's not just knowing whether they've got it right or wrong, it's knowing how they've responded. And then you can start to see a little bit more clearly what the children's thought processes were, where they might have gone wrong, and then you can address from there. So that again is another really powerful tool for Century, and how it's impacted our children has been fantastic. But really the focus I wanted to have is how we've used it back in the classroom. We had to do to make this work for us. We did an audit of all the children prior to lockdown in terms of who had devices, who didn't, because we wanted the children to be able to use it at home as well as in school. So we've provided those who didn't necessarily have internet access with dongles so that they could be connected online. We've provided devices to those children who didn't necessarily have them. All our Key Stage 2 children don't have devices, but we're quite lucky that we've got a suite of laptops and a suite of iPads, and then we're looking to build on that with another class set of 30 iPads as well. So it's going to give us much more scope, and that's going to be something that we look to develop over the next sort of 4 or 5 years, to the point where all of our Key Stage 2 children have got a device that they can use. And it was interesting actually that it was mentioned use of diagnostics. So bringing it back into the classroom, and when we came back into school, one of the first things that we do when we use Century is set a diagnostic nugget for the children. The example on screen here is algebra. So what we'll do is we'll get the children to take part in that diagnostic, and then we get some instant feedback and a bit of a gap analysis as to what the strengths and areas for development are within that concept, and it tells us what their prior knowledge and learning is. So then we know where to pitch, where to go with our next steps and with the children's next steps. So once they've done that diagnostic, we then deliver a teaching input. And what we've really enjoyed with Century is that sometimes the videos are such good quality, often we just play the video and then we support with modelling around that, because they break the strategies needed, they break down the strategies that are required really, really well. And then what we'll do is we'll follow that with a series of nuggets. Now we combine the in-class stuff with home learning as well. So you'll be able to see on the screen here that the diagnostic is set for to go live for a couple of days. And then we have the nuggets that would follow that as a result of our in-class teaching that are live for much longer. So we're giving children time to experience the full sequence of teaching, and then to have a go if they want to, or if they feel comfortable with a concept, having a go when they feel ready. One of the things that we've done in class as well is having a group of children working on Century Tech, or the whole class working on Century Tech, but the feedback you get in lesson is amazing. So we will have our teacher iPads, and then as the children are completing the nuggets, we can track how well the children are doing. So we can be moving around the room and tracking exactly who's doing what, and then delve deeper into how they've answered questions, where they've gone wrong, and then we can then pick out misconceptions more easily, and that's allowing us to give better feedback more quickly to help move the children on. So I think our use of mini plenary in particular in the middle of lessons has become better because of that, and that's something that Century has allowed us to do. In terms of, aside from maths, because we've used it predominantly for maths and science, we've also used the assignments section as well. So when we've done a sequence of teaching and learning, we might then decide to give the children a little project challenge, something that might take longer than a week, maybe a couple of weeks in some instances, for them to then go away and then independently apply their learning that they've done. And then we can receive that back from them. And then there's a tool on Century where you can then give them feedback on the learning that they've done. But for us, it's been massively powerful because it's kept us connected to the children, and we felt really in control of the decisions that we've made in terms of where they are and where they need to go. And having all that data and feedback from Century has been massive for us. So in terms of assessing learning and progress as well, I think one of the things that you don't necessarily see in a lesson is how much time a child has spent on an individual question. So I've brought a couple of examples up here. So this is one of the children in my year 6 class from this year. And this is where Sentry has really helped. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got a breakdown of some of the learning around factors and common factors. And there's this one question here where they've spent 7.5 minutes working on this question. And then they've come to an incorrect answer. They've got the correct answer there, but then there was an addition to it, which meant that they got it wrong in the box. So when I then saw that, I was able to go and approach that child and talk about how they found that question, what was the issue. And actually it turned out the understanding was there. That was a bit of a typo. They'd spent a long time working it out, but then it was a typo. So then that tells me straight away that they were actually okay with that. Whereas the one on the right-hand side of the screen here, that's about them not understanding and interpreting the question correctly. So then I was able to then take aside and do a little tutorial with them and then work through a couple of similar examples. And then very quickly, they were able to understand what the right approach or strategy might be and how to come to the correct answer as a result of that. So this side of Sentry and tracking the nuggets was massive for us, but we just think it's been brilliant. And that's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Karl. That was really nice to hear. We've got quite a few questions, but keep them coming as we put them to our panelists to answer some of our questions. So first one for you, Karl, off Scott. This sounds great, Karl. How easy is it to get set up on Sentry?
Really easily. We did it overnight, essentially, just before lockdown. So we had all of our Key Stage 2 children uploaded onto the system by the admin and tech team at Sentry Tech. We just had to send over the CSV file, and then it was uploaded within. So all the children had the username and password, and that was accessible within a day or two. And then same with that, if we have any children leave school or any children that join, adding them on so that they've then got the platform to access. It's done, yeah, really quickly. As soon as you send the details over, it's accessible. Yeah, really easy.
Yeah, that's something that we really do make sure that we spend a lot of time with, make sure that our teachers all know how to work on Sentry, make sure that every school they've set up with an account manager, that they're trained with one of our in-house teachers. So that, yeah, that is something that we focus in a lot. Okay, another question here. Am I able to preview nuggets? So nuggets are our learning materials, our lessons, before setting them to my class, or for me to go through in a lesson?
Yeah, so you have a teacher dashboard, and any courses that you assign to your particular class. So I'm a Year 6 teacher, so I've got the Year 6 maths, I use the multiplication, I use the arithmetic, but I use the Year 6 science, I use the Year 5, 6 reading. You have access to all the learning within that course that the children have access to as well. So you can go on before a lesson, you can look at the materials, you can actually have a look at some of the questions that might be asked of the children as well, and see how you can tailor your modelling and scaffolding around that and what might work and what you want to use or not. So it's really easy to access again, and within 10 or 15 minutes, if you are going to ask the children to complete something on Sentry, you've got a really clear picture of sort of the journey they're going to go on.
Great. A question now from Helen for Pobble. How easy is it to use Pobble alongside Google Classroom?
Yeah, thanks, Taryn. Yeah, so in answer to the question, we see it used alongside the variety of tools, to be honest, and it really comes down to how you're using the other platform. So for Google Classroom, as an example, all of the Pobble content can be also shared via a magic link. So you can send a link via a Google Classroom task. Similarly, for uploading works, as Sam mentioned, that quite a big part of what we offer at Pobble is to turn children into worldwide published authors. So that allows you to upload PDFs, documents, or use our own pupil tools. So yeah, in answer to the question, there are numerous ways that it could be used together. One of the things, you'll get my contact details at the end. I'd be more than happy to provide a short demo at any point to show you how I do see schools using those two tools together.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, another question for you, Karl. Are you using Sentry just for maths?
No, we've used it across. So we've used it for maths, we've used it for science, we've used nuggets for the reading, we've used them for SPAG as well. And then if we have used it for English aside from reading and SPAG, we've used the assignment tool. So we've set writing assignments using the assignment tool on Century, and you're able to upload documents and resources to that to support the children, and then it gives you an opportunity to give feedback once it's been submitted. So we've used the assignments tool as well as just the nuggets, but we find it particularly useful for maths.
I know that when you were talking, Rosie, you were using it for SPAG.
Yeah, so for the year 3s and 4s, particularly because I teach them, we're using it for SPAG because it's something that they can do alongside their other lessons. So if they have it, you know, if they're logged on and they finish their homework, for example, and they're in homework club and they've got 10 minutes left, then it's quite nice for them to just be able to work through it, like Kate said, at their own pace. And it also then complements the teaching that we do, because we can refer back to the nuggets that they've covered, and therefore sort of pick up on the areas that they found challenging, or those that really understood it. We can then extend them onto, you know, more challenging grammar. We found it really useful.
Brilliant, thanks. One for any of our panelists here. How do both of the platforms work with shared teachers for a class? And I'm going to add to that as well and ask about supply.
I can talk about shared teachers. We just have both teachers have access to the platform. So with Century, they can both be on and the classes get assigned, and the Century team help to set all of that up. But they're just assigned to the same classes, so they can see exactly the same thing as each other. And on Pobble, we have given every teacher that we think may want to use Pobble. Some of them are not necessarily even our English teachers. So our science teacher is also has an access, and our humanities teacher as well, so that if they want to upload different work, because we work in subject specialisms, and I guess if you had a regular supply teacher, you would just set them up with an account. It's not difficult to do that, and then they can all do the same thing.
Brilliant, thanks.
Can I just chip it? Yeah. So one of the things that I've shared our school leaders guide in the chat, everybody. One of the things you get as part of a Pobble school is unlimited teacher accounts. So it does mean that for things like job shares, school leaders that perhaps want to, you know, don't have their own class but want to dip in to see some of the children's writing, moderation as an example. It basically is really easy, and Tom in my team is on hand to support with that, and it works quite well with job shares as well. Sorry, Taryn.
I'll just add on the end of that one as well. We use it, some of our teaching assistants use it for intervention sessions too, particularly the Pobble 365. So yeah, having unlimited accounts has been really useful for us.
That's something that we are looking at quite a lot. A lot of teaching assistants are using online platforms in order to help with intervention groups. So obviously here at Century, we're running training sessions with our teaching assistants to make sure that they know how to use the platform and that they can access the same resources that the students are able to, and it really helps. A question from Timothy. How effective is Pobble for pupils struggling to read?
Yeah, really, really good question. So one of the things we try to do with, you saw it earlier, some of the examples that Sam mentioned, all of our lessons are differentiated 6 ways. So for example, if I take the theme chocolate, one of the biggest challenges for writing is if the children can't read the tasks, they can't read the activities, they can't access the prompts. So with that in mind, one of the ways we try to tackle that is by, you know, still having a chocolate lesson available for children in year 1, and very similarly for children with EAL, SEN, you know, those same challenges basically. So that's one of the ways. And again, things like Pobble 365, one of the reasons I believe Pobble 365 is so successful is it's just an image. So what we're trying to do is to get children to start thinking creatively, to start thinking about vocabulary as the first way into writing a sentence. And again, it all links back then to those challenges of reading as well. So it is very much a writing platform, of course, but obviously we're very mindful that, you know, a big barrier to writing is obviously that ability to read the tasks, etc. So yeah, again, very hard to demo in a 1 minute answer, but we're very thoughtful of that when putting all of our content together.
Something I can just chip in with as well, if the school is using Office 365 and the Microsoft tools, and they open, because these are all web browser based programs, if you open it in Microsoft Edge, then you can use the immersive read aloud function, and that we have seen being quite successful as well. So there is that option too.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. We've got a question here. I'm going to ask the second bit. Can the parents see what a student is doing? Do you want to answer first for Pobble, and then I'll jump in for Century?
Yeah, so from a Pobble perspective, and probably Kate and Rosie can add to this actually, the celebration pieces, so not every piece of work on Pobble goes out for everybody to enjoy. Lots of it goes for moderation, but the published pieces, those 2 or 3 writers a week that Rosie mentioned, the parents get an automated email as well to say that their child is a published author, which obviously is a lovely email to receive as a parent. They can then look at that writing themselves, and they can even encourage to leave that child some feedback, a comment. So that's the way that the parents see from a Pobble perspective. And Rosie, Kate, I know have seen great success with that in their particular school.
In terms of Century, we have a student dashboard. So any work that a child has done on Century, they can see what work they've done. So there's graphs with their scores of the different nuggets that they've completed. They're given suggested nuggets that they perhaps might like to complete. They're told how much of a course they've studied, what the scores they've got, what their strengths are, the areas for improvement. So we have a really comprehensive dashboard. And parents, students all have access to this. So parents also have access to this page too. So they can see when their child's been on, how long they've spent on everything. They also have access to the resources. So quite often we've got parents that really want to work with their children. So maybe that they're doing, long division in class and they're a bit unsure. Well, they can go onto Century, find the nuggets on long division, work through it. And quite often we find that parents get in touch with us, asking us how best they can work with their students when they're using it at home. So it's something that a lot of our parents do use, and they like being able to see the scores that they've got, where they've gone wrong, things like that. Okay. Are the Pobble and Century text systems integrated in any way? Unfortunately, we're not integrated, no. I think in terms of onboarding, Century either does it through a CSV form, or we use Wand or group call, so we can integrate directly with your MIS, but we don't integrate with each other's company.
Yeah, and just to add, we also use Wand as well for integrating data. That's probably the one where there is that crossover. And again, yeah, as you say, we're different platforms, but that complement each other, which I think is the most important thing. That came across really well from Kate's presentation.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's all of our questions answered. So I'd like to just say a huge thank you to all of our panelists today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights of how you've been using these platforms in your school. It's been really, really interesting. And also thank you to everybody who has joined the session. I hope you have learned something today. We are all on social media, so we'll be tweeting about this event. You can use the hashtag Inspiring Young Learners, and you can mention us both at Hey Pobble and at This Is Century. So please, if you've enjoyed this, get onto Twitter, make sure you give us a mention and tell us how you found this webinar. But thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a lovely rest of the week, and I'm just going to hand you finally over to Simon.
Thanks, Taryn. Yeah, thank you for hosting the session so well, and all your brilliant answers at the end. Just to echo, a real big thank you to all the presenters. I know it's always difficult at the end of a busy school day to then switch hats and start presenting about something. So yeah, thank you for such comprehensive presentations. Again, thank you to everybody that's joined today and all the fantastic questions. You can reach out to me at simon@pobble.com. My email's on the screen if you do have any questions. We are sharing, as Taryn mentioned, on Twitter, and we will include in there the hashtags and tweet addresses of the presenters today, because again, if you want to follow them to see some of the other brilliant work they're doing in their classrooms, that would be great. But yeah, thank you to Century for hosting. Really enjoyed working with you again. And yes, thank you everybody for joining today's session.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.